Okay, Chapter 14, Fire Suppression. We're going to talk about and explain the science behind fire suppression. Ultimately, our goal is to reduce the temperature using water. We know that water is the universal extinguishing agent, and it is abundant. And that's what we use. So the sense behind this is to put enough water on the fire to absorb the heat and to stop the gas phase of the chemical reaction. So this reduces the temperature of the fuel so it does not have a sufficient vapor to burn. It does not, you're stopping the process of pyrolysis with the fuel, and it is the most effective method for extinguishing smoldering fires. Cooling burning gases in upper gas layers. This will limit or stop flaming combustion in the upper layers. It again slows pyrolysis of combustible materials, and it reduces radiant heat flux from the upper layer itself. And in turn, this reduces the potential for flashover. And traditionally, over the years, we have always taught that you shouldn't put water on fire until you see it and those kind of things. And over the last 10 to 15 years, we've changed pace on that. And so we have been instructing firefighters to cool that upper layer and take that potential for flashover away. Straight stream from the exterior in combination with a good sound tactical ventilation is going to give us cooling of the hot gases in those upper layers. This lowers the risk that ventilation limited fires will reignite and re-enter into the growth stage, and it may lead to full extinguishment or make the interior much more tenable for both firefighters and any victims that may still be inside there. And so during the Slicers movement, after the Governor's Island project that NIST completed in New York City, we came up with a lot of good fact and science behind what this slide is calling resetting the fire. And so that's applying water from the outside to the in and the upper layers, getting that cooled, and by cooling those hot gases, we make things drastically lowering the temperature and make things more tenable for victims and for our firefighters who are entering to apply water and do extinguishment. Water converts to steam, it absorbs more heat energy, it expands rapidly, and often we want to avoid creating a lot of steam. Excess steam can reduce our visibility, and it increases the chances for steam burns and also may disrupt the thermal layer. And so we want to use those straighter streams and the larger droplets of water or the solid straight stream because we're producing less steam but also cooling to a maximum effect. If we pick a semi-fog or a modified fog pattern and we spray the smaller water droplets, in turn it will produce a lot of steam, and that steam expansion rate will effectively put out fire, but it also produces a lot of steam which can burn you through your hood and in and around your mask, around where your ears and your neck are, and close to your mask seal there, and through your hood, okay, and also around your wristlets. It can get you, and it can get you a little bit through your gear. So, and it's very uncomfortable. This fog pattern type technique was first developed by the Navy, and ship captains, they would fog a room and close it off, and the steam would do its job. But on a ship compartment, they can tightly seal and close off these areas, and aren't at risk of burning people with steam, and aren't at the risk of fire spreading. And so this technique in a modern structure fire today is we don't want to use full fogs or half or semi fogs. We want to use the straightest pattern that we can use. Controlling the production of our steam is use good nozzle techniques. One, again, keep the stream as straight as we can, and use those nice big T patterns and a slow sweeping Z pattern across the ceilings and across where the seat of the fire may be. And we want to apply the appropriate amount of water and apply water using the most effective form, being that straighter stream. The hot gases will contract. We're going to produce some steam, but we're not going to produce an abundant amount of it and cause us to get those pins and needles type burns. We can remove the fuel. This is rarely an option in a structure fire though, and that's what we have to keep in mind. This is a common tactic though for ground cover fires, exterior stack material fires, even vehicle fires. There's times we can remove fuels, and flammable liquid and gas fires. So more so with the wildland fires, we can create a fire break and remove that fuel within that area. We also remove fuels by raking the break, making a fire break, raking down to the mineral soil. This is a common tactic for wildland. So we may dig trenches at our wildland fires with tractor operations as an example. They'll take a plow and a dozer and they'll plow out, making a big ring, and they plowing it out down to the mineral soil again, turning under and removing away the vegetation. Also allowing the fire to burn until all fuels are consumed. And this, some people get concerned about this. It's called burning out operations. A layperson may term this operation as a backfire or setting backfires, letting something burn away from their home, consuming the fuels. And so this is another method of removing fuels by burning it away. Flammable liquid spills may create greater environmental harm if extinguished with water. And at that point, we may deal with runoff from our water and then contaminated soil or water. Sometimes the best solution may be to allow the fire to simply burn and maximize our thermal damage and minimize groundwater pollution by doing this. Removing the fuel source as well by stopping the flow of a liquid fuel, for an example, closing or blocking off valves and moving solid fuels out of the path of the fire as well. Excluding oxygen, reducing the oxygen available to the combustion process will reduce fire growth and may result in extinguishment over time. Smothering fire, again, if we take away any side of that fire triangle, heat, fuel, oxygen, and we inhibit that chemical chain reaction, then we will have extinguishment. Oftentimes we will exclude oxygen by using foam, fire foams, and we will create a blanket of foam over a flammable liquid fire as an example. And this keeps the oxidizer or air, 21% oxygen, getting to the fuel, and it also, foam applied correctly, mixes with water to make the foam, and it will cool as well. So covering a stovetop on a grease fire is another example. We call this smothering the fire. Displacing oxygen with inert gases by using clean agents such as the old halons, and there's other clean agents now that has taken the halon's place. These are used around computer equipment, large rooms with server equipment and internet server type equipment, electronics, and this displaces the oxygen and will inhibit the combustion process. Now for us, this example is important to note that we need to wear SCBAs even if that fire has already been extinguished prior to us getting there by the system, because it does displace the oxygen, and we cannot breathe in and survive in low oxygen atmospheres. Blanketing again the fuels with a foam concentrate and a foam product. We separate that oxidizer from the fuel with that, and also cooling it down some, and then simply closing doors and windows. We talk about controlling doors, and we worry about a fire that is ventilation limited becoming driven by the ventilation in the air. So we do that in the hopes that we can keep it from growing as fast. Inhibiting the chemical flame, dry chemical agents, again, halon agents are capable of this as well. And halon is no longer being manufactured, but has been replaced by other agents like it that are more environmental friendly. And so these take care of that chemical flame, or that chemical chain reaction at the flame interface. When we inhibit or we interrupt the combustion reaction, and this stops the flame production, this is effective on the flaming gas phase of fire, and it's not effective on a non-flaming or a condensed phase. So it's either pyrolysis is taking place very well, and we're taking care of that vaporization. Basically, we have to remember that there are some, especially liquid hydrocarbon fuels, that produce vapor all the time. Propane will also produce vapor at very low temperatures. So we may choose a method that is more effective on that process. The next objective we want to talk about is the methods for suppressing structure fires. For firefighters, structural fire attack, this is our bread and butter operation, so to speak. We do go on other types of fires, as far as vehicle fires, and wildland, we can list a whole lot of others, but this is the one that we train the most for and can be the most dangerous for us. And so the duties and the tasks are going to depend on one, departmental SOPs. It could depend on assigned duties, the amount of fire that's involved, and the type of structure. And we certainly want to look at building construction first, and we begin to make decisions based on that. And then we want to know the amount of fire, where the fire is, and we start putting these percentages into our mind as what we have involved. And then we begin to make a risk analysis assessment, and we talk about risk a lot, save a lot, risk little to save little, and risk none to save nothing. So we put into perspective burn time, is there potential for collapse, are there victims, is this property worth saving, are there victims that are savable. Maintaining situational awareness during structural fire attack is something that we need to think about, we need to do at all times. We need to be aware of the conditions, and I'm a proponent of, and one of my pet peeves is people who are standing around on a fire scene that haven't been assigned and not paying attention to the radio, talking to one another about whatever while they're waiting to be assigned. Pay attention to what's going on. Pay attention to the radio traffic. Look and read the smoke. Look at it and read the smoke. Look at the building. Do a walk around if you have time and you're not assigned, to see what's going on all sides of the structure. And so knowing the location and the extent of the fire, again, listen to the radio traffic, look at what you have on scene, what's burning, and begin to look at your smoke. Look at the changes in the heat level, any changes in the fire behavior, changes in its spread and its growth that may include signs of rapid fire development. And again, smoke tells you a whole lot about what's going on inside that structure, from the color of it to the velocity, the thickness that it's coming out. It is by far one of your best indicators. How dense is this smoke coming out? And is it rolling and billowing out of there? We must remember that smoke is fuel as well. We look at any other hazards. This could be utility hazards. This could be service drop hazards. Basically anything that could be a hazard to us in the fire scene, as well as the fire. Locations of possible safe havens and alternate exits is a part of your situational awareness. It's something that we need to think about and keep in the back of our minds all the time that we are operating. Changes in the stability of the structure. Again, we've got to be able to read smoke. We've got to be able to get in there and make good informed decisions on burn time, the amount of percentage that's on fire, and put all this information together along with our experience and make good decisions on whether we're going to enter or not enter and what type of attack that we'll use. Indications, again, of ceiling of floor collapse. You see signs. Lightweight truss oftentimes doesn't give us much signs, but if you have a large amount of a structure with a lightweight truss construction on the roof involved, and it's been involved for well more than 20 minutes, you're looking at possibility of collapse at any time. Changes in the neutral plane as well. If you're crawling along and you're underneath the smoke and you can see this nice pillowy cloud looking layer of smoke and it stops about midway, if you see that drop and then raise quickly, especially raise up off the floor very quickly, then we know that the fire's got a lot of air. And it could be on the verge of, we've completed the flow path most likely, and we're on the verge of seeing flashover, especially if we feel heat. Other conditions to observe and to communicate: the color of the smoke and the change of it. Again, reading smoke is a whole nother class, but it does tell us a lot about what's actually involved, what's burning, and if anything is being taken care of on the inside yet. Volume and behavior of that smoke. How is it coming out? The density and the volume of the smoke, very important things. Again, that it can tell us not only the seat of the fire, it can tell us how things are changing. Is the fire spreading, or are we putting water on it at some point and making things better? Locations where the smoke is escaping the structure. Where is it coming out? May tell us what's heavily involved and what's not involved. Any locations of victims or occupants is an observation and a communication that we need to make known. If somebody runs up to us and gives us this information, that needs to be relayed to the incident commander as well. Wind direction and strength are important. Every firefighter should be checking the weather before the beginning of the shift and know, is it going to be a windy day? Is it going to be storms out? Is it cold? Is it going to snow? All these things we need to know. The wind, strength, and direction can cause us a lot of problems on a fire scene and can cause rapid growth and rapid fire behavior changes. The fire threat to exposures is another thing that we observe and we want to communicate. And think of in the terms of not just external exposures like we do think about, but also think about internal exposures. The next room over, 2 rooms over, or maybe the floor above you. When we make entry, incident commander or the supervisor decides where we're making entry. The attack hose lines are placed to protect firefighters, occupants, and property. And we still abide by the theory that we have a primary line for attack and we have a secondary line for that safety of that crew. Crew members should conduct quick entry checks before entering and maintain their situational awareness. Where are they at? Where's your exits? As you are making your way to the seat of the fire. Some considerations on pre-entry would be reading fire behavior indicators, again looking at the smoke, understanding the crew's tactical assignment, identifying potential emergency escape routes, so we want to think of those escape routes as well, evaluating forcible entry requirements, and then once we do force a door, for an example, we want to control that door. We want to close it back until we're completely ready to make entry. That way we don't allow a long time of air flowing in and kicking up the fire even more. Identify any hazards. Verify that your radios are on the correct channel and that everything is operational. Ensuring SCBA is on full and operating properly, that your pass devices are activated and operating properly, and then check each other. When we're making an entry, interior attack team tools that we need with us, first and foremost, one of the most important tools is your radio. If anything were to happen or go awry, that you can call a mayday and call those maydays early on. Next on the list of important things would be a hand light, thermal imaging camera for the officer or the group leader, pike poles, and forcible entry tools. When we make entry, our nozzle person should open the nozzle fully. We're going to evacuate any air in the line. We're going to check the pattern setting to that straightest stream that we can get it if it's a combination nozzle. And we want to ensure that our hose line is kink free. Bleed any air again from the hose line. Kinks, even small kinks in your hose line, will drastically reduce your gallons per minute of flow. So we want to make sure that we get all the kinks out of our hose. Again, talking about the doors, always maintain door control, and that way we're controlling the flow of the path of the flow, and we're not allowing an abundant amount of air to flow in and change our fire behavior. It can do it very rapidly, and by controlling the door until we're ready, we can keep this from happening and give us enough time to make it to the seat of the fire and not get caught in between this flow path. So position yourself before you make entry in a safe area. You're going to be near the entrance that we have decided upon. Extinguish fires near the entrance before moving in. If there's any overhead fires on porch overhangs or anything like that, go ahead and extinguish those. Stay low out of the doorway. Check the door for heat. Keep the door closed until the hose line is then charged and the entire crew is ready to make advancement. Look at your smoke movement. Look at your airflow when the door is opened. Apply any water to the ceiling using a straight stream in a side-to-side or a large Z type motion. When conditions improve, cool the overhead gases while you advance. In some situations, you might not apply any water at this point. It may not be hot enough yet, and you may be able to advance at this point. We got to know our pre-flashover conditions. And in these conditions, when it starts getting warm on us, when we see the changes in the smoke and we start to see rollover occur and it starts to heat up pretty good, we need to know that we're in the pre-flashover conditions. We do want to apply water to the hot gas layer, and we do not want to enter the structure. This is better suited if we do this from the doorway before we put ourselves in that hot atmosphere. Close the door and retreat if necessary. Controlling the door, we've made this a point a couple times already. Place a rope, hose tool, or a utility strap, or your extra webbing over the doorknob, and once entry is made, close the door enough to limit the airflow without pinching off or constricting your hose line. Be aware that your hose line still has to be advanced. You're probably going to drop a firefighter at this pinch point at the door, and once you've made your advancement, make an effort to try to keep this door as closed as you can get it. Attacking from the unburned side. Conventional guideline for many years has been this guide and this thought process, and it's largely disproved by fire analysis and laboratory tests. So your Governor's Island test and your temperature test by cooling the hot gases give us a little bit greater flexibility. Factors that have changed in understanding of structure fire behavior: a greater heat release rates of modern building construction materials and furnishings. So what things are made out of, what furnishings and contents in rooms are made out of, is burning hotter and releasing a greater heat release, releasing more heat. And it has increased effective wind on fire expansion and development as well. So let's talk about the wind. Open doorways can create flow paths. The wind increases fire growth and spread. It can cause firefighter casualties. And so if we leave a door open, we force it, kick it in, whatever the case may be, and that door is left standing wide open, we're not ready yet. We're putting on our mask, we're putting on our helmet, getting the hose line checked, getting ready to advance. Before you know it, 30 seconds or more have went by of hot gases escaping, but also, cooler air entering in and feeding this fire. And so we know that fire can double nearly every minute, and it's exponentially growth when you add a lot more air to it. And so firefighters in the past have been caught in between this, in this flow path, and flashovers have rapidly occurred. This can cause unpredictable changes to the fire. We want to attack with the wind at your back if possible. Incident commander should complete a 360 size up and determine your entry point based on the wind direction. We get into these real windy days, it can be pretty dangerous with wind blowing at us. Doors between the entrance and fire should be controlled. Again, control the doors, keep them as closed as you can get if your hose lines are going through there. Otherwise, they should be closed. Cooling of the gas layer. This is a way of reducing heat from the hot gas layer. It's effective when facing a shielded fire. The hot gas layer presents a problem for the hose line crew. We know that smoke is fuel, number one, and it may transition to rollover, it can transition to flashover or smoke explosion at any time. Hot smoke radiates heat to the combustibles in the compartment, which then increases the pyrolysis, or the decaying and the production of vapors from those fuels, and it adds more fuel then to the gas layer. So we have more materials off gassing, we have more materials producing vapor, and that's adding to that layer. Eventually, that layer is going to catch, on fire and begin to combust, depending on the temperature, the heat in the room. So our goal with cooling the hot gas layer is to slow the transfer of heat to the combustibles, basically. And by doing that, we will slow down or stop the off-gassing and the pyrolysis for those combustibles. Then we want to reduce the chance of overhead gases igniting as well. And so those gases that have already been produced, they get heated up. Eventually they're going to reach their ignition temperature, and that's what we want to keep from happening. So we direct our stream towards the gas layer. We quickly and smoothly open and close our nozzles. We adjust that pattern based on the fire conditions of the compartment. Most combination nozzles, you can keep it straight and you can sweep across the ceiling at good 10 to 15 second intervals and put out a lot of rollovers, and you can cool down a whole lot with just that little bit of water. The reach of your stream is important. If the water droplets fall out of overhead smoke, then the gases have cooled. Stop spraying water into the smoke. If fire burns unchecked, the gas layer is going to regain heat. The gas cooling may have to be then repeated. You can repeat the gas cooling as needed with your hose team as your hose team advances under that gas layer. So with our direct attack, it's pretty simple. We're going to apply a solid or a straight stream directly onto the burning fuels. basically until we've cooled it enough to where the fire is extinguished. With an indirect attack, this can be made from inside or outside of a structure. We're going to direct the stream towards the ceiling or bank that stream off of walls, and we're going to produce more steam than a direct attack normally would. This will in turn cool the fire environment. It fills the compartment with steam and smoke, and it may be the only method possible until temperatures are reduced to where that we can make a different type of attack. So an indirect attack from the exterior, we direct solid or straight stream at the ceiling through an opening, through a window or a door, and we get it up towards the ceiling. We discharge water until the room cooling of the fire is then achieved. Once the temperatures have been then reduced, our hose lines can be advanced and firefighters can then make or transition into a direct attack. From the interior, an indirect attack would be where we advance as near to the seat of the fire as possible, remaining outside of that compartment though, and then use the ceiling and the walls to deflect or bank the stream onto the fire. And our biggest thought there is, why crawl into a superheated area when you don't have to? You can start with this indirect from outside of the room, this type of attack, get it cooled down quite a bit, and then you can move through that doorway where you can reach, bend your hose around and reach the seat of the fire. Large volumes of steam can be produced. Firefighters should not be in the compartment. The room may need to be ventilated before it is safe to enter. Directing the stream onto the ceiling and the walls can slow the stop of pyrolysis, and the water should not be applied long enough to upset the thermal layer. You can darken things down pretty quickly with a little bit of water, and then you can get in and hit the seat of the fire and produce less steam. Combination attacks, we can use a combination. When I talked about the T and the Z patterns that we use most often, you can sweep the top part of the T across the ceiling and then bring that hose line boom down the wall onto the seat of the fire, so you're actually doing a combination of both things. Same thing with your Z pattern as well. You can use a circular pattern as well. You just want to be careful about whipping it real hard because you can upset that layer. With a transitional attack, the exterior fire attack through a ventilation opening. The interior crew makes entry and then reaches the fire to complete the suppression. The fire can be reset, and then we move in and find the seat of the fire as well. This helps transition fire from ventilation limited to fuel limited, and it may reduce the potential for flashover. And that's one of our biggest goals with this type of attack, with resetting and do a transitional type attack, is to reduce the flashover and the erratic fire behavior. We want to create more survivable interior for the environment as well. If there are any occupants or victims inside, you're going to reduce the temperature for them as well. And it's effective for fires in buildings with modern synthetic furnishings and structures that are built with lightweight construction, which is modern construction today. Short applications of solid or straight stream applied to a side-to-side motion into the overhead products of combustion. Your straight stream may be the best in well-involved, unventilated interior areas. It's not going to upset the thermal layer as much, and it certainly will generate less steam because of the bigger droplets. And it does give you better reach. With any attack, we want to size it up, deploy your attack hose lines, open the door or the window nearest the fire, and apply water to those gases. Fire crews can then enter the structure when it is safe to do so. We can cool this environment basically by resetting the fire, if you will, and then moving in to the chosen opening and begin our process of extinguishment.